Cue motivational music. Hello and welcome to the podcast. My name's Dean and I'm a designer on a quest to further understand the creative industry and learn as much as this noggin will hold. Join me as I share my discoveries and tap into the minds of some of the most well-respected creatives in the world. This is my creative therapy. Hello and welcome to episode 15. So today I'm joined by one of the godfathers and one of my personal heroes of design, Joe Duffy. So it's really weird. I listened to this episode a couple of days ago, and one of the things that I've noticed since I started the podcast is that the more nervous or excited I get, the faster I speak. And you can definitely hear it in this one. And it's something I'm going to work on. But in this episode, Joe talks about how he went from studying fine art to working as a technical illustrator before making his mark in the world of graphic design. Why he was known as the Generator Man, his friendship with Milton Glaser, who was best known for designing the I Love New York logo, and loads more. Thank you. It's an absolute honor to have you on here with me. I'm literally an all-time fan, and it feels super weird that I'm experiencing this right now, but I'm super honored. So thank you so much. Whereabouts are you in the world right now then?
We're at our home in Arizona.
Oh, nice.
Out in the desert at the foot of the mountains, not too far from Phoenix, about 50 miles east of Phoenix in Arizona. And so we live here, for about three months during the wintertime.
Beautiful. That sounds.
Yeah.
I'm in the southwest of England, which sounds boring in comparison.
No, it's beautiful. I love England.
Do you get to come over here very often?
I haven't for quite some time. I mean, we had an office there way back when in the 90s. So at that point in time, I was there every month. Wow. And enjoyed it very much. We had an office in London.
Nice. So yeah, Joe, if you don't mind, I'd love to just jump in and get to the practical stuff, because sure. in my eye, I would consider you one of the godfathers of design.
Wow.
So can you just take us back to sort of when you started? I know you started in fine art and you got into the industry that way. Can you just explain to us how you transitioned from fine art into design?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. I went to school and studied fine art, primarily painting, sculpture, and I wanted to paint pictures for a living. Married my wife, Patsy, when we were 20 years old, and we had our first child, Bridget, shortly thereafter. And then I couldn't make any money. Couldn't make enough money to support my young family. So Patsy's father was a marketing director of a manufacturing company in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. He said, "We have an opening in the art department. Would you like the job?" And I said, "Of course." And he said, "Well, it's for a technical illustrator." So he said, "Can you do that?" And I said, "Of course, I can do any kind of art." So I took the job and I became a technical illustrator, which basically meant that I would do exploded views, detailed views of engines.
Is this where you got your nickname, the Generator Man?
That's me, yeah. Yeah. So we did that. I did it for 4 years, and then as I was doing that in the technical art department there, I learned about printing. I learned about photography, typesetting, because we did all those things ourselves. And then they had me do posters and covers of brochures for products and whatnot, because I knew I could do art, fine art as well as technical. And that kind of led to graphic design by learning, coming from fine art and painting, and then learning the technical aspects. That's what got me into art direction and commercial illustration and eventually graphic design.
Wow. That's quite some transition. So I seen somewhere that before Duffy started in 1984, you spoke to Milton Glaser and Pirtle. how come it was those guys that you decided to reach out to? Was there any reason in particular?
Well, I've always wanted to combine art and design. Coming from fine art, I had the artistic skills. I love to paint. I paint literally every day these days. And so I wanted to have a job as a designer, but I wanted to do it in the way that Woody and Milton did, which was by creating art and utilizing that artistic skill into creating design, identities and posters and whatnot. So, yeah, as you said, I just called them up and said, could I ever visit your studios? And they both said, sure.
Wow.
Went down, saw how Milton Glaser ran his shop in New York and how Woody Pirtle ran his shop in Dallas. And I learned so much from that. And then I ended up opening Duffy Design in 1984.
Wow. That's awesome, just to be able to call it Milton Glaser. How was he? Was he very opening and welcome? Or
He was, and we've stayed in touch. In fact, my son Joseph, who now runs our design company, and myself went and visited Milton just 2 summers ago in New York. And he's still working, still has his shop. And I think he's like 80, 84, 85 years old. But he's still the same.
Wow.
He's a fine artist as well as a designer. And he's a great guy.
That's awesome. You two should get in contact and maybe do some collaboration on some sort of painting and get it out there.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
That'd be beautiful. But I mean, one of the reasons why I respect you so much, and it touches on what we were talking about, not just as a designer but as a person, is because you combined what you wanted to do with what you were good at to make a living. And I think I seen an interview you did with Rob Johnson, where you said one of the problems with the design business is that too many people are in it for having a job and making money rather than having a great life and doing what you're proud of. And I totally agree. And I think it's the reason, I mean, if you think of the reason why we want to get into the industry, it's to make a difference through design, whether that be commercially or not. But annoyingly, in this day and age, for some anyway, the turnover of work doesn't give us enough time to be creative. And I think as technology advances, the need for design will too, resolving in a quicker turnaround time, which will sort of dilute that creative process.
Yes.
Is this something that you're starting to see?
Yeah, it's, I mean, when I started, we didn't use computers. I mean, they weren't there. And it obviously it wasn't about creating websites and interactive campaigns, et cetera. It was about combining art and creating it in such a way that it would project a brand to be differentiated and tell the brand story, but in an artistic way. And you're right. I mean, everything is moving so fast today that it's difficult. That combined with the fact that there are so many designers today. I think one of the things that happened way back when we started is it became popular. I mean, there weren't that many designers back in the 80s and 90s, but it became popular and it became, I think, a way of making a living that provided enjoyment because it is art. And so more and more young people got into it, designed programs in universities, colleges all over the world, started focusing on design as a curriculum. And so more and more people got into it. And I think, part of the problem is that a lot of people got into it who didn't really have artistic skills. And with technology, it's so much easier to push here, push there, combine things, and create a design, even if you don't have artistic skills. But the problem there is that if you don't have artistic skills, you can't do great design. That coupled with the fact that so many people got into it, and that kind of waters down the business of design. One of the problems that designers face today, particularly design firms is that because there are so many designers out there all over the world, there are many of them who are willing to work for next to nothing.
Yeah.
And there are so many clients who really don't know the difference between good design, bad design, and great design, that they're saying they're shopping for it like they would shop for someone to, deliver their packages to a store. And then that waters down the quality of design. And I think it's hurt the business, at least relative to the way it was, back 20, 30 years ago.
No, I completely agree. It's quite frustrating. There are a few websites that spring to mind where it's very similar to what you've been talking about. Well, you have one client send a brief out to 100,000 designers saying, I want something doing, and then 100,000 designers will come back say, I'll do it for $2. No, but I'll do it for $1.50. I'll do it for 50 cents. And then before you know it, it's just, it's how much you sort of value your work and your time, I guess. And it's quite sad in a way that that sort of stuff is happening. But I guess from people who are creating those sort of platforms, it's unfortunately a moneymaker.
Yes.
But just going back to sort of when we were talking about like sort of everyone's a designer, was it slightly frowned upon when you were sort of getting into design by your elders? Was it sort of were they sort of saying, there's no money to be made in art, there's no money to be made in design? Because I kind of see that now. It's very similar with sort of like social media, because social media's come across, and the older generation, it's harder for them to sort of understand how quick it's come. But obviously the younger generation have grew up with it. And if I had a child and they said they wanted to get into social media and I knew nothing about it, I'd probably laugh and I'd say, there's no money to be made in social media. What are you doing? But obviously I'm completely wrong. So back then, was it frowned upon in any way, or was it seen as something that everyone could make a living from?
Well, I mean, my parents, my teachers, when I was a teenager, and when I told them that I wanted to be an artist, they said, that's ridiculous. You'll starve to death. There are so few artists who actually make a good living, and don't go there. And my parents said, don't go to art school. My teachers in high school said, don't go to art school. Become a lawyer or go to medical school or go into business or what have you. And I was persistent. And I'm so glad I was, because I know so many people my age who did go into the business of making money, and their lives have not been fulfilling. Even though many of them have made lots of money, they didn't wake up in the morning and look forward to going to work as I did every day. The fact that I got up and I knew that I could go create something made my life complete, and it made my relationships with my family and my friends and just day-to-day living so much better because of that. And I think that's really, really important. You have to, I think, live a life and have a career that is fulfilling and that is enjoyable. Otherwise, you're not going to be a happy person, especially when you get older.
It's interesting when you were talking about education as well, because I've spoken to a few creative influencers over the past few months who some have online educational platforms and they sell a lot of their services, and some suggest that their methods might be more beneficial than traditional education because of the speed in which things are moving.
Yes.
I guess you could agree with that, but at the same time, it's hard to accept it.
Yes,
I think. Is. Yeah, going back to what you were saying about stop going to work, it reminds me of an article that I seen you published. I think it was with Fast Company, and you said, "When I'm happy, I'm more creative and more productive. When I'm productive, I feel accomplished and happy. When I'm happy, I am most creative. It's a good, not a vicious cycle." And I think that's a great quote. And I was speaking to an author a few days ago about one of his books. It was called How to Make Creative Ideas, and we were talking about the motivation and the inspiration cycle to get up and do something that you really want. And I read a few years ago a really nice quote from a book. I can't remember what it was called, but it said something like, inspiration doesn't lead to motivation, motivation leads to inspiration. And I think what it meant by that was a lot of people, when they have an idea in mind, they jump online and they start looking at similar ideas.
Yes.
And they spend so long doing that they don't get time to actually do the thing they wanted to do. Whereas if they just got into it and started making what they wanted to do, before they know it, that motivation will lead to inspiration, which will lead to motivation, and the ball will get rolling, and they're on that journey.
Yes, that's so true. I mean, my inspiration comes from everyday life, and obviously there are maybe 10 different projects that I'm working on. Some of them are fine art, some of them are design. They're all in my head. I'll go out for a run, or I'll go out on my bike, and it seems to me, particularly as I've gotten older, the more my heart rate gets up, the more I kind of physically exert myself, the more ideas pop into my head. But that's typically the way it works. I'm thinking about these things all the time. But then I'll go out and I'll do something that isn't related to sketching or, looking at other inspirational pieces of art. It all of a sudden pops into my head, and then I will come back, sketch it out, get on the computer, look at different aspects of how I could actually treat this idea that popped into my head. And then from there, it goes forward. But the original idea, whether it's for a logo or a package or a painting or what have you, starts with that germ of an idea in my head, and then I can, start working it out. And obviously it changes over the course of the process, but the original idea is, I think, either good or bad, and then you take it from there.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I completely agree. It's almost like the eureka moment. The ideas come to you when you least expect it, whether you're in the shower or just going for a run.
Right.
Maybe not trying to overwork your brain and just let something pop into it rather than trying to find it.
Yeah.
From Sonny's Chocolate to Coke to Mall of America, or even before then, was there a project that made you realize this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
Oh, let's see. I mean, that would be way back.
Or was it the first Valentine's card that you made your wife when you were 7 years old? Is that right?
Yeah, that could be it. That could be it. I don't remember what it looked like, but I'm sure it was inspirational to both of us. Yeah, no, I started actually when I was 5 years old in kindergarten. I went to a Catholic school, and the nun had all of us draw a picture of our favorite patron saint, and I drew a picture of Saint Michael the Archangel, and she put all of the pictures up on the wall, and everyone gathered around mine, and all the kids said, "You didn't do that. That's too good." And from that moment on, it's kind of like whether you're playing football or whatever, if you realize that you're the best of everyone in the group, you want to pursue that and continue to become better at it. And that's what I thought. From 5 years old on, I could do art better than the rest of the kids. So, that's what pushed me along.
That's so interesting that you remember the first piece of art that you were sort of that everyone was going crazy about. I know, right? I was thinking the other day, I remember the first drawing I did. It was I remember where I was as well. I was probably about a similar age, probably about 5, and I was at a friend's across the road, and I seen him drawing on a notepad, and I just seen the way he was connecting shapes together and just making stuff. So I grabbed a bit of paper and I drew no word of a lie, I drew a skateboard, and I drew like a wire coming off the skateboard leading to some TNT. Really strange. I'm not sure why that's just popped into my head, but
You could probably sell that for a lot of money today.
you probably would, yeah. I should put it on eBay.
Yes.
Again, for people, the sort of the younger generation who are interested in getting into the industry, what would you say it is that, because there is a lot of designers, like you say, what is it that sort of separates the good from the really good?
I think if you go back through time and look at all the designers who have done the best work today and 50 years ago or more, it's the ones who have the artistic skills. I mean, I hate to be repetitive here, but I think that there are a lot of designers who are into the technology today or are into, I don't know, too much of the business aspects and how to make money or how to work for a big client, even if a big client won't allow you to do good work. It's the designers who have those artistic skills, I think, and that hold to them, because as with any business, there's a tremendous amount of compromise for the sake of making more money. One of the things that I've always done in our business is I've kept our company small, because the larger it gets, the more overhead you have, the more money you have to make, and the more likely you are to compromise the integrity of your design. And I've been faced so many times over the years with clients who would not allow us to do work that we would be proud of. And I have always said goodbye. We've always had that as a policy. If a client, regardless of how much money they're paying us, is forcing us to do something that we wouldn't want to put on our website or show other designers, we just will say, I'm sorry. And we actually have that in our contract that we have with all of our clients, is that if we are unable to reach agreements on this project, you will pay us for the amount that we have done to that time, and then we will turn everything over to you and take it from there. And I think that's really, really important, because if you don't do that, obviously design is a business, and the unfortunate thing, as we mentioned earlier, so many people think they're designers when they aren't. And I've been told by some big companies, well, I think you should do it in blue, or I think you should do it like this, or my wife likes this color, or whatever. And it's like there's arbitrary decisions. And then also, I think that there are a lot of people in business, in marketing groups and whatnot, who kind of want to claim the credit for creating the new identity or designing the new package or whatever. So they want to be a part of the creative process. And I think it's absolutely essential that clients are part of the creative process. And we do this thing where we create a creative brief, where we take imagery and we present it to the client, imagery that we believe will help tell the story of their brand. And they'll pick and choose imagery, and they'll say, well, I think, this image doesn't work, this one does. And together we put together this visual collage, which we call a visual brief. And the client, we started doing this way back when, and I can't tell you how much good it has done for our business, because the client then is a part of the creative process. And then when we present our designs based on that creative brief that we did together, they are far less likely to say, I don't like it, or where did that come from? Because they literally helped invent it. They look at the visual brief, and then they look at the designs that we present, and they realize that we did this together. And it changed our business and design many, many years ago. And I know a lot of other people are doing it that way now, because you do need to collaborate, and you do need to let the client in on the creative process, but they have to come in at the right time, at the beginning, and not when you're actually, choosing the typeface or the color scheme or what have you. So that's been very helpful for our business.
Yeah, it is a shame to lose that connection that you have with the clients during that process of creating artwork or whatever it is with the brand. And you obviously lose that when you use websites like Fiverr.com and Tenor.com or whatever they're called. And it's really nice just to get the client in on the process, just to see how things work internally and just to make them aware, I think, of how the creative process works. And ideas aren't just pulled from thin air. You know, there's a method to the madness. There's a reason why you've chose that typeface with a slight serif on the end. You know, you haven't just chose it because it looks nice. There's a reason to it.
It works.
I think it's tricky for non-designers or non-creatives. I think it's difficult for that to sink in. They're almost not asking you to create something brand new and refreshing. They're almost telling you to create something that they've sketched and attached in an email. You know, it's almost like they've got the idea. That's what we want. I guess it's a time. Well, it's an exciting time because no one really knows where it's going, and it's the same with trends within design. Did trends evolve as quick as they do now? Back when you started?
Yeah, I think they did. We kind of started some trends relative to making handmade art and turning that into design. In fact, I was just thinking about this the other day. We were, when Charles Spencer Anderson and myself were working early on at Duffy in the mid to late 80s, you know, we built everything by hand. We did all of our own art for posters, for packages, for whatever. And we were told by some designers at the time that we were really illustrators. We weren't designers because we were making the art, and they were hiring an illustrator or a photographer or kind of sending things out. And to my way of thinking, the design becomes that much more truly your design if you actually create all the aspects of it. And so we kept doing that, and that was kind of a trend for a while. But we still do that. The designers that I have hired over the years all have to have the artistic skills to be able to not only render their ideas in a way that will present them to a client and to the rest of our team in a powerful way, but they also have to be able to actually execute the designs when it's appropriate. So I make sure that the interns that we've hired and then the young designers that we've hired all have the artistic skills to actually create art and incorporate it into their designs.
So how much involvement do you have in Duffy at the minute then? Are you sort of, do you pop in when you can, or I guess you can see work come in via email now, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I'm online like this with my two kids, Bridget, who's been working with me for, over 25 years, Joseph, who's been working with me for 20 years. They're running the company on a day-to-day basis, and they're in the design studio in Minneapolis day-to-day, along with Nancy Koulis, who's been working with me for over 25 years. So they're kind of running the show, and then I'm kind of retired, but I still love design, and I still love being involved with them. So I literally see what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And then if they want me to help with something, or if they want my opinion, I'm more than happy to get involved. But at the same time, I want them to really take it forward, as they should, because they're of a generation that relates so much better to what brands need today relative to design than I am. And it allows me to get back to my roots and do what I really love doing, which is not having a client and painting pictures. I do have clients, but typically they're coming to me to create a painting, a portrait, or whatever, because they know what I'm going to do, as opposed to design clients who sometimes think, "I'll tell you what to do."
Yeah. So not such a strict deadline,
Right.
to get work back to them. A bit more relaxing.
Yes, very much so.
You just put headphones in and
Yeah.
get on with it. I see you're a fan of cross-country ski. Have you had a chance to do any of that
Yeah,
so far this year?
We have this home in Arizona, and it's in the desert, and we love to get away from winter to a certain extent, but then we're back in Minnesota, and we have a cabin up in northern Wisconsin, way up in the woods. It now has about 6 feet of snow.
Wow.
And it's absolutely beautiful. So we spend part of our winter up there cross-country skiing, and I still get out every day when I'm up there and cross-country skiing. I've loved Nordic skiing since I was very young, and when you come from where I come from, you better have something that you enjoy in the cold and in the snow, because a good part of the year is that way.
I've always wanted to ski, but it looks so hard. Like you've got to balance on those little, what are they? Well, skis. Yeah. They're about 6 inches wide or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think snowboarding is probably harder, but it looks fairly easier just because the board is thicker.
Yeah.
Have you tried snowboarding or anything like that?
Oh yeah. It's fun. My kids downhill ski, and they backcountry ski, and they're into Nordic skiing. My grandchildren are competitive in Nordic skiing, and we have a ball doing it. We have a cabin, and we have trails that we groom all the way around our property. So we're up there on our land skiing, and we have a ball, and then we come back and get in the hot tub, and then we dry off, and we go up to the studio and we paint pictures. It's pretty good.
That sounds like a life.
Yeah.
You're living the dream. It sounds like you're living the dream. Absolutely.
Exactly.
I'll let you get going anyway, Joe. But it's been an absolute honor to speak to you. It really has.
Well, I'm so grateful for you taking the time to do this, and you're a great interviewer. And I really enjoyed it, and thank you very much. Let's stay in contact.
Thank you very much, Joe. Have a great morning, evening.
Morning.
Have a great day. It's 9 a.m., isn't it?
Yes.
It's 9 a.m. Have a great day.
Okay, thanks so much.
Cheers. Thanks,
Talk
Joe.
soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.